Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber, to better understand their buyers, what motivates them, and what they hate that vendors do. It's time to unmute your mic. Are you ready? All right. Welcome to another episode of Audience First. As always, I have a very special guest in the house today. In New York City, I have the one, the only Adolfo Lopez. Adolfo, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right, let's kick it off with the question that I ask all my guests. Who are you? What do you do? And why the hell do you do it?
Adolfo Lopez. I'm a sales engineer at AlgoSec. Just hit the 2-year mark last month. And before that, I was a network engineer for a long time. I always kind of give that as a disclaimer in all my client meetings that I was a network engineer a lot longer than I've been doing this. So I try to relate everything back to my experience doing that.
I love it.
And yeah, I was doing the NetEng thing for a long time, and just kind of always intrigued me. I like the client-facing part of it, so made the jump a few years ago.
Why are you in the security space? What excites you about it, or what's your motivation for continuing to work in this space?
I think it's always changing. It keeps things exciting. Everybody needs it. Every type of organization, big, small, whatever it may be. It's really important. So it keeps entertaining for me as well.
Yeah, I love it. It's a recurring theme. A lot of the folks that I talk to like that it's always changing. It's never boring. So, yeah, welcome to the club. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me again today. This is going to be a little bit of a different format. Generally, what we do on Audience First podcast is we have organic conversations. We kind of drill down into different kinds of use cases with regards to security and different customer research objectives. But today we're going to get a little bit technical. We're going to dive deep into AlgoSec's ACE platform.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little bit about, the challenges that you see customers face and why they use ACE, how they use ACE, and where we can find ACE afterwards. So, I was speaking to Gal earlier, and, he has his opinions and insight into what customers are facing from a need and a challenge perspective. So, based off of your experience working as a sales engineer, what do you see kind of like high-level customers facing with regards to the status quo of network security and then moving into multi-cloud security?
Well, on the network security side, obviously it's really important, right? That's kind of one of the first doors that people need to get through, right? When to get hackers looking for, right? When you're trying to compromise the system. So you need to make sure there's ports are locked. The cross connectivity is blocked as needed. So that's what people have been doing for a long. That's what I used to focus on, right? Making sure the firewall policies were all set, making sure that connectivity for our applications are all set. Now, as we get into the cloud, and here I am bringing up my experience again in NetEng, the challenges that I started facing when we were moving into the cloud, because we were moving really quick. It was actually one of the last projects that I was working on before I left NetEng. We were just shuttering data centers anytime that the contract was up and just moving everything into AWS, or at least most of it. So we were moving really quick, and there were a lot of teams involved. So that's one challenge, where there's a lot of teams that are doing different aspects of this cloud journey, right? We had DevOps involved. We had a cloud team involved. We had the server team involved. We had NetEng involved. We had security team, just an InfoSec security team, InfoSec team involved. So that's one challenge where everybody's doing different things. We have to get on the same page. Everybody's looking at different things. So we didn't really have tools to put everything together. Another aspect of it is because we're moving so quickly, sometimes by the time that, I got my hands on a security group or on some type of application that I needed to wrap my head around, somebody had already been working on it, and sometimes it was wide open.
Yeah.
So there might be some holes that were there that now we need to patch up, right? That we didn't even know about. And a lot of times, because we didn't have those tools, we kind of end up finding out about them, not too late, but a little later than we would have liked to, right? So those are just a couple things.
Yeah. And then in moving into, managing multi-cloud environments, what are kind of the core challenges you see customers facing?
So for again, my experience, we were focusing on AWS at first.
Yeah.
Near the end, we started looking at other ones. I would say one of the biggest things for me and what I've seen is just something like terminologies, right? What's a EC2 instance in AWS is a VM in Azure, accounts versus subscriptions versus projects in GCP. But at the end of the day, we're still talking about the same things.
Right.
You might call something Route 53, it's DNS, right? S3 buckets, they're storage, right? So sometimes you have to wrap your head around those different terminologies and maybe where to go. Compared to me, I was used to just going in a CLI and configuring a switch in 10, 15 minutes,
Yeah.
right, from scratch if I had to. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
I do want to go back to my original question about the status quo, and I want to correct myself if need be. Is like, what is the status quo of versus cloud, like cloud security? I don't know if I'm making sense. Like, I don't want to assume it's a status quo.
No, I get
because
what you mean. Maybe traditional.
Yeah,
but,
traditional. Yes, traditional.
Yeah, I would say the traditional setup would be just a bunch of firewalls,
Yeah.
different zones. You have something protecting the perimeter.
Yeah.
You have some stuff internally protecting it. And maybe that was it. Maybe some, as far as networking, some routers and switches, different branches, different offices, data centers, whatever it may be. So you had to protect each spot. You have to protect each data center. Each office has its own firewall. Maybe there's a main firewall that protects everything for your internal databases and stuff. But now we're going into the cloud. So I'd say everybody's at least hybrid, at least has something in the cloud. Some are 90% in the cloud and 10% on-prem. Sometimes it's the other way around. I've found that most people are around 50-50. And sometimes maybe they move a little too quick and then they have to scale back. Maybe they're with one provider and then they have to go into a second provider.
Yeah.
I've had that experience where we were focusing on one. Once that provider goes down, then the next day everybody's like, I think we need a second one.
Yeah.
Right. So now, and then maybe that one goes down. Now you need a third. So, and then there's different, features that maybe one provider has that is better than others or whatever it may be. But now that we have that hybrid environment, now we need not only a firewall maybe at the perimeter of the data center, but now we need some connectivity into the cloud. And now how are we going to protect that cloud environment? Are we going to put a traditional firewall in the cloud, which a lot of people do, is very common, or are we going to use the native firewalls? Are we going to just rely on security groups? Or are we going to rely on the native storage systems and DNS and all those resources, or are we going to do our own? Are we using containers, right? Because a big reason that I see people go into the cloud is the ability to scale up, that auto scaling, right? And most people end up using Kubernetes containers because you could just spin these things up and down as needed, right? So now that brings up a whole new aspect of who's handling those containers,
Right.
who's checking those containers for risks for the configurations.
How do organizations, before we dive in, just a quick question, because we touched on this earlier today, but I want to know, how do you see organizations managing multi-cloud environments, given that there are a lot of silos within the organizations and different business units and different priorities within security and the business?
Some are more siloed than others, for sure. So we have, when we're onboarding, right, there's a script that's pretty straightforward. It creates the roles, creates all the permissions we need. But I've seen customers that have that just in that script, they might need 2 or 3 different teams to complete that. One team to complete the permissions, another team to complete maybe in different accounts, whatever it may be, right? So sometimes that's a bit of a challenge as far as how they address that. I think they have their internal processes, and just like anybody else, maybe they could make it a little better, a little smoother.
Right.
And I think that's where we could help out.
Sure.
As far as the multi-cloud, I think the cloud security space is really saturated, and there's a lot of acronyms out there. I've been to the AWS conferences, and you hear CNAP, you hear CSPM, KSPM. And I don't really like to use any of those acronyms with us.
Yeah.
I think that we just have a really overarching cloud security platform that could really help with not only on-prem, in the cloud, hybrid, and everything in between.
Squirrel moment. What do you think is the most overused buzzword in cloud security?
I don't want to say it in case I end up using it by accident, but I just a lot of those acronyms.
Yeah.
Like CNAP, CSPM, single pane of glass, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
okay.
but like I said, I end up sometimes I think they're used because they kind of make sense, right?
Hey, listen, you can use them if you back it up with the context, and you don't throw it around like spaghetti on the wall. But all right, I want to get to the demo. I do want to know, what is ACE? And you guys just recently launched the ACE, messaging and the campaign, and the product. But what's ACE? What's Horizon? Take me through kind of the meaning of it all.
Yeah. So Horizon is our overall platform.
Okay.
Right? AlgoSec has been around for, I think, over 20 years now, and we've really been focused on that on-prem side, right? Application connectivity, application security, and that's made up of a few different parts of the platform that focus on, again, the firewall devices, looking at doing a deep dive on the configuration there, making sure the security policies are good, checking for risks, looking for unused rules, the ability to optimize the policies, the ability to automate the change requests, right? And of course, looking at the overall application, which is really what we like to focus on. Now, that's made of the ASMS. That's our AlgoSec Security Management Suite.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have ACE, AlgoSec Cloud Enterprise, which we're really focusing on the cloud infrastructure. And we're really just trying to do the same thing that we've been doing on-prem. We're just expanding it into the cloud, and we're doing even more than what we were doing on-prem. We're looking at misconfigurations. We're looking at containers, Kubernetes clusters, even down to VM scanning if needed. So yeah, that's
amazing.
That's ACE.
Let's dig in. I want to take a look at the platform.
Cool.
Want to show me?
Sounds good. So as I mentioned, what we really want to focus on here at AlgoSec is the applications, right? And I'm going to go into what an application is, and why it's so important. But I'll bring back my NetEng experience one more time, probably a few more times. But when I used to have a maintenance window, right, and every few months we had to make some changes that were a little more higher impact, and we would have our change review meetings, and we had a big conference room of people across the world on the conference calls, and we're going over the plan for what we're going to do. And no matter whether I was rebooting a router or a switch or refreshing something, making a big firewall change, maybe I was just moving a cable from one port to another, whatever it is. The question that I would always get is, what's going to be impacted? Because that's really what matters. People probably weren't even listening to some of the what my plan was. They really just want to know what's going to happen, and exactly what's going to be impacted, right, if something goes haywire.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes to answer that question, we have to ask around, who's using this firewall policy, right? We're going to make a change to it. So who's using this? Do we know? Maybe we have to ask around, at the office and figure out, that was used for this database access, years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not even needed anymore. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But the point is that we have to do a little bit of detective work to figure out what exactly is going to be touched. Now, with AlgoSec, we could help first, the one thing we could do is help answer that question, right? So if we see here, we're looking at the impact analysis. So let's say I'm working on this New York City help desk server. Once I click into that, now I see the different applications that this server is a part of, right? Now let's dig into one of these. We look into this help desk app. So right off the bat, you're already seeing some data. You could get a diagram of it, right, to see exactly how this application works, the different zones that it's connecting to. We get some metadata over here. We have some tags. And remember when we were asking about who owns this, you could have the technical contact for this application. You could even add a business owner, right? Expiration date, that's really important too. We could touch a little bit on that a little bit later, but for example, like the example I just gave, maybe it's not used anymore,
Right.
You even notice right here on the corner, it says recertify application.
Right.
Right. Now, going back to the server I was working on, go to the flows here. So when we're talking about an application here, we're not talking about an application on your phone, right? We're really just talking about a collection of flows. And those flows can be anywhere within the environment, especially now in the hybrid environments. So when we're looking at a New York City help desk trying to connect to a backup server, the person that's designing this application, they don't really know, and they probably don't even care where those servers are. They just need that connectivity there. And that's where this is where it helps, right? So you could either design it here manually. We could, of course, help by auto discovery. We could collect data and start making recommendations on what your applications might be based off the traffic that we see. We could even use some AI, right? So I mentioned the change automation. If you start using your change automation system, or even if you have it in another change automation system, we could bring that in and start using that data to figure out, all right, we see that these are some of the your potential applications, right? So what we were looking at just a second ago, that would cover in the cloud or on-prem. And I mentioned a couple of the ways that we could help discover those applications, right? With the auto discovery, the AI functionality, or just manually, right? Now, as we were talking about ACE, right, which is kind of what we want to focus on. In our on the ACE part of the platform, we also automatically discover the applications. And we're going to dive into it as we dive a little further. You're going to see how everything kind of ties together.
Right.
But this is an example. This is a real account. This is real data that we've picked up, and we've discovered all these applications. All of this is automatic, even down to the name, right? We've picked that up automatically. You don't have to. You can even scroll down here. We've picked up 684 applications. Obviously, some are a little more complicated than others, right? We have some that have 84 different microservices. Some have 5. I'm going to dig into this one. But that's really that's one of our, we released this maybe middle of last year, and it's really opened up a lot of eyes. And you're going to see how it really helps connect the dots and also just help save time and lessen that detective work, like I like to say. So if we click into this Web Apache application, now we're getting a really high level view of this Web Apache application. And depending on who's looking at this, depending on what team is looking at this, we mentioned the fact that there's different teams and some silos. I always like to say that this tool could really help bridge the gap between the teams.
Right.
Because it does a lot. And depending on what team you're on, some things might be a little more important than others. So for example, this might be enough. All right, I just need a general idea of this Web Apache application. There's a couple of EC2 instances. There's an ECS cluster, ECS service. All right, I'm done. I get it. I have a general idea. Or maybe I need to look at take a deeper dive. So anytime that we see this cloud over it, that just means that we could go into that microservice. And now we're getting a little more context.
Wow.
Right? So now you could see that now, and this is usually where people start opening their eyes a little more, because now
I wish you saw me because I literally like was
Well, I heard you. I heard you say
leaning into the screen now.
So this is really cool because as I was getting more and more into AWS, I mentioned the terminologies, right? So I wasn't, not only did I was used to just going into a CLI, doing the commands and doing what I had to do. Now in AWS, even though it has a CLI as well, but at first I was really just relying on the GUI. And there's different parts of the GUI and there's different things. There's a lot of resources that they're using or you could potentially use.
Right.
So if I wanted to get a general idea of this web ECS pub app microservice, maybe I would start with the EC2 instance, just like I did now. You see that red flag? That means that's the one that we clicked into. So I could click into that in the GUI and start from there. I could go into the different options and say, all right, it's connected to this VPC and it's connected to this subnet. And then keep clicking around and, all right, it's connected to this routing table, this security group down here, right? And usually that's what I would do. And I would maybe have my notebook on the side, or maybe the team, me and the rest of the team would get on the whiteboard and draw things out. But that takes time.
Right.
And depending on how complex the application is, it might take 15, 20, 30 minutes just to kind of wrap our heads around it before we could even start troubleshooting. Here, we're doing it automatically. And for all the applications within this account and within the entire infrastructure. So now what's really cool is that besides looking at what the application is doing, we also see where the potential weak spots are. And so right now you could think of it as an attack path analysis, which we're gonna release that. It's gonna look a lot better than this, where we're gonna really point out exactly where that potential attack path is. We're gonna have some more context to it. But just even today, you could still do that because you're looking at those critical spots. So if I want to look at this EC2 instance, and now I'm looking at this VM scan, right? And I could go into the misconfigurations. Wow. And we see there's a couple things that were found. The key pair was not found. If you want to know how to remediate that, click into more info, and you'll get some more data.
Amazing.
All right. If we go back here, you even see that some of them fall under some of our compliance checks. So these fall into some of the compliance checks. These are just kind of our own out-of-the-box checks that we're looking for as well. Yeah. All right, so here I just jumped to a different application just because it has a little bit better data. But same context, right? We're looking at the security group, the EBS volume. So if we want to look at this security group, and once we go into more details, we're going to start looking at the network risk, right? And now we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into that network risk part of the module, part of the platform. Once we click on risk triggers, one more click, and now we're going to get down to the exact rule that's causing the issue, right? And that's really important. And I really like to take a pause here because now you see this one, that rule is highlighted. Right. Pretty straightforward. It's wide open. Now, I like to take a pause here and kind of like just point out how quickly we could go from, we were looking at the overall environment, we went down to a specific application, down into the microservices, down to the specific parts of the microservice, down to the exact rule that's causing the issue. And obviously we're taking our time going through it, but if you're troubleshooting, you get to it pretty quickly. Right. And that's just one way that we could get to this. Now, if we want to focus on network risk, we go to overview here. Again, we're looking at it. We always try to start high level, right? And then we could get down to the different aspects, right? So here we're looking at the entire environment, all the different providers. A couple things I like to point out here. For example, unused rules, right? Right. There's some day one things that when it comes to like use cases, right? There's some things that you could do within 20, 30 minutes, right? We can onboard these accounts and I've seen it even in evaluations, 20, 30 minutes, we're already getting some really good data. We're already seeing some risks. I've had some customers stop me dead in my tracks and say, "Well, wait, what is that I see there?" Yeah. And they start troubleshooting in the middle of the eval, right? because they saw something that they're not supposed to see. And I like bringing up that story because that's how quickly we could bring value, right?
Right.
So we could look at the unused rules. We collect the flow logs, the VPC flow logs, and after maybe a couple weeks, so this might not be day one, but after maybe a week or two, you're going to start seeing some rules aren't being used, right? So you could click into that. Now, risky VMs. What's a risky VM? Basically, it's something with a public-facing IP, but also has a critical or a high risk. So if we want to click into that,
How are you scoring that based off of what, like,
the risk scores,
yeah.
I forget what database exactly we're using. I could get
Yeah.
back to you on that.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah. So here we have the list of the VMs, right? The different risks that were attached, different policies. We could click into that to get some more information. And there we're getting a little more context, right? And we could just click into the different risks that we found, right? Now, one thing I really like to point out, again, looking at a kind of a day one thing,
Yeah.
you click on show unprotected assets, and we have 3 VMs that don't even have a policy in place, right? So that might be something else that kind of opens up some eyes, right? You might not know about this. Going back to the, my experience, when we're moving quick, things are constantly spinning up and down, things get missed, right? So this is something that could help you catch things
Yes.
day one. Another way to look at the risks is if we go to this risk tab. As always, we're looking at everything across the environment, the different providers. You can export this to a PDF if you like. But now let's say we want to just whittle it down to maybe just AWS, maybe a specific account, maybe it just critical, right? And now we have it down to just a smaller. We see the affected assets. So we see not only the risks, the policies, and the assets that are being affected.
Right.
And if we do a deeper dive into this, we're going to be back where we started. We see the exact rule that's causing the issue. So you can see there's a couple different ways you could get to it. But at the end of the day, we see where that issue is. There is a way to manually adjust things on the fly here. But really, we would rather we recommend using our change automation system, which is we could have a lot more documentation on that and different workflows that you could use, and that's probably worth another another session just on its own. It's a really deep part of the product. Jumping back here, going back to where we're looking more at configuration. So that's where we're really looking at the network risks. And here's where we're looking more at the configurations, right? So now I'm looking at the dashboard for one of these accounts.
Okay.
You could see some compliance checks. CIS, PCI, HIPAA, just added this SOC 2. Nice. All right. So, and this is really, and we do this on-prem as well, right? We have a much longer list for on-prem. We're looking at NIST, SOX, GDPR. We have a long list for on-prem as well. And that's really useful because I used to have the compliance team come over to my desk every few months and say, all right, you got to check this, this, and this. Here, we're looking for that all the time. Right. So now you don't have to be reactive. You could be proactive, and you could say, all right, let's work on these compliance checks throughout the year. So we're not, just running around at the last minute to meet these deadlines. Right. So here we were inside one of the microservices. We touched on a couple of different security issues that we found within it. We could always jump back to that main application, or we could keep on digging further, right? So let's go into this cluster. Let's go to this ECS service. I'm going to do one more click into this task definition, where we could get down to the container level, right? And this is really handy. And we're doing a lot of really cool things with the containers. There's 2 things we're doing. Well, first, this is kind of a quick dashboard. You can see the different vulnerabilities, exposed ports, the malware. That's what we're going to dive into in a second. The vulnerabilities, if you want more information, you can just click on these links. It'll take you to the CVE. Now, here what we're doing is we're doing 2 things. We're doing the static analysis and the dynamic analysis. Right, so the static analysis, we're just looking at the configuration. Remember, this is all agentless, right? Read only. So we're looking at the configuration. We're getting a high level view of what it's doing, the different commands, the different variables. One thing I really like to point out here, besides obviously malicious files, vulnerabilities, is how we break it down layer by layer. And this is something else that really stands out to me, and I think would have been useful for me, because at first when I was working on the AWS stuff and the cloud migration, the containers and Kubernetes and all that good stuff was part of it, and that was really new to me. So this would have been gibberish to me when I was looking at this years ago. But even though I don't know what these commands are doing, everybody knows what critical means, and everybody knows what a vulnerable package being installed means, right? So whether I'm the team that's checking for this, or I'm the team that's actually working on it, I could. So if I'm the security team or NetEng or whoever it may be, I see this and I could go to the team that handles it and say, all right, this layer needs to be worked on. And the second thing, we deploy the image in our sandbox outside of the production environment. So now we could see what it's doing. And this would actually tie back to that graph that the larger application graph. But you could see how it's behaving. You could see the different processes that it's running. You could see where it's reaching out to. All right, this might look a little weird, right? So now we see the different DNS requests that it's making, remote hosts again. Again, we see this stand out. We even do a little bit of a forensic analysis. So if this is running a web server, we'll take a screenshot to see what it's looking like.
Oh, nice.
And we'll even show how it looks when you're running it in a terminal. Right? And you could adjust all this, the different things to look for here in the threat management. So we have a lot of it out of the box, right? Some default block lists, but you could always adjust that as need be. Obviously, there's a lot more we're doing. So we do a deep dive into the Kubernetes security as well.
Yep.
Right, where we're looking into the misconfigurations in the cluster, different, maybe some role permissions, but that's a big one. A lot of people were asking about roles, misconfigurations with roles within Kubernetes. So we're checking for that as well now. You see that down, if I click into one of these, you see that the RBAC, the cluster roles.
Yeah.
We'll check for exposed secrets. Another one of those things where maybe people are moving really quickly and they don't notice it, but we'll see it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more we could dive into maybe for next time, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna leave some
Lots
time.
of use cases though that you guys can cover.
The use cases, the different parts that I looked at here, for example, just regular troubleshooting, right? So you look at that. So maybe you know that there's something going on with an application, and you go into that application and you look at the different aspects and see, all right, there's something going on there. Or maybe it's just just regular auditing, right? You want to see that, like this would be a regular check. All right, why are there exposed secrets in this cluster, right? Automation, right? Which again, that's another aspect that we could spend an hour on. But that's a big one, right? Just making the changes within a hybrid view, which actually, let me show you that really quick. Yeah, so if we jump back to where we started, we're looking at this application, right? So we did a deep dive into the cloud piece. If we take a look at this example here, right, the reason that it's red, and some of them are red, some of them are green, is because we run a connectivity check, right, to see which flows have to be resolved, which flows might need a change request to make them work, and which ones already work. And as I said before, for the person designing this, they don't care if the help desk server is in the cloud or not. They just want it to work. But if we run the connectivity check down here, we'll see how that connectivity looks. I always like to say this is kind of like traceroute on steroids, right? So not only do we see the path, but we also see where things are getting blocked. In this case, we're getting blocked by some on-prem devices and in the cloud. If we want to see exactly where, you just break it down. We see the rule that's causing that denial, right? So I really wanted to show this as well, because this really shows that hybrid view.
Yeah.
And that's really one of our biggest differentiators, where you might have some overlap with some of the stuff that on the cloud side, but the fact that we could bring everything together into that hybrid view really makes a big difference.
Amazing. So for organizations just getting started with you guys with ACE, what does the onboarding process look like for them?
If you're an existing AlgoSec customer, it's pretty straightforward because obviously you have on-prem already.
Right?
So we would just spin up. So the cloud piece of the ACE part of it is SaaS, right? So that's really cool because you don't have to worry about spinning up a new VM or whatever it may be. We'll just send you an email, log into it, and I think I mentioned earlier there's some scripts that you run to just get it going. If you do need to do it manually, which some customers do depending on on the protocols and processes they have, you could do it manually as well. There's a lot of documentation on how to do that. But once you onboard the accounts, we're going to start seeing the data within 20, 30 minutes,
Yeah.
maybe less. So yeah, I mean, the ACE part of it is it's a really light lift. You don't have to really start working on it. Once you onboard the accounts, it's done. If you want to onboard the primary kind of the OE on the OU level, all the other accounts that you add going forward will automatically be added. So yeah, it's a really light lift for the onboarding.
If there's one takeaway you want the audience to have today and leave and remember about ACE, what would it be?
I would say that again, the cloud security industry is really saturated. There's a lot of people doing a lot of really cool things. Some things that maybe we don't do. Maybe you'll see some overlap with things that you already use. But the fact that we have that hybrid view and the connection with the on-prem and the ability to start doing change automation and really looking at it from the application level, right? Going back to that example of the maintenance window and the change review, when people ask you what's going to be impacted, you'll be able to answer it not just quickly, but really in depth.
And for those teams that are interested in it, learning more, what's the best way to go and explore ACE?
We could go to algosec.com or we'll have put a link somewhere to reach out to me and the team. And we could set up some more conversations for sure.
Amazing. Awesome. Now, I want to get to one of the other fun parts of the show, new segment called the hot seat. So it's very hard to differentiate in a very clouded market. This is the space. Nobody else is here bothering you to highlight some quick fire questions that I'm going to throw at you. You ready?
Sounds good.
All right. Top of mind, just go quick. Fire quick. What's AlgoSec's dirty little secret, something buyers never ask but should know?
Oh boy. We are constantly working on new features and growing the capabilities behind the scenes.
What is one challenge that shaped how your company does business today?
I would say that the fact that the cloud, we've been working on this cloud part of the product for a couple of years now. I was kind of part of that team last year that was really focusing on this. And as I keep on mentioning, there's a lot of competitors. And I think we can't just focus on features, right? We use head to head. We have to really look at the different use cases and how everything really ties back to the everyday user.
What's one lesson you learned the hard way that others can learn from today?
Don't try to, if you don't know something, you don't know.
Yeah.
I would say like, sometimes it's okay to say that we might not know right now, get some more information later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes AlgoSec different from the competitors?
It's that application-centric view and the fact that we could go back to, our bread and butter for 20 years has been that on-prem, that deep dive into the on-prem policies and automations and applications. And now we're just doing the same thing in the cloud.
What's the biggest myth about AlgoSec's product category?
Biggest myth? That's a pretty easy one. That we just do policy management. Yeah, that's the biggest myth, which we do a lot more. I don't think I even touched on that much.
Again, link in the comment.
Yeah.
You can extend that, but or you guys could, sponsor another episode, which is also okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Describe your product in 3 words. You could use 4 too. We cheated this morning.
No, that's fine. Application connectivity anywhere.
All right. What's the biggest misconception about AlgoSec?
I think it's kind of the same thing as the myth,
Yeah.
where we only do policy management or on-prem even. Like some people don't know that we're doing this much in the cloud.
If AlgoSec were a superhero, who would it be?
My favorite superhero is Spider-Man, so I'll go with that. And I really think
Spider-Man.
we could tie all the webs together. And so
It's going to be
it
interesting to
fits.
see what everybody says at the end of the day.
I was gonna say Spider-Man no matter what,
Yeah.
honestly. So, but I think it fits.
All right. The future of security in 2025 and beyond, where's it going?
I think we, need to get used to the multi-cloud, the hybrid. I think everybody's going to be some form of hybrid. Again, maybe 90-10, one way or the other. But I think eventually people will see that there's some advantages to both, and you'll need some tools to manage it all, the different vendors, the different providers. I think AI obviously is a big buzzword. I mean, going back to your question from earlier, the buzzwords, AI is definitely a big one, and I think we're working on it. Where you have some features that are using it already, and I think it's only going to grow.
Awesome. Adolfo, I mean, this was an awesome session. I wish we could
Thank
go
you, thank you.
longer and dive in deeper. We can always do another session. You're always welcome back to the show.
Sounds good.
Is there anything else you want to impart on the audience today before we sign off?
No, thanks for the time, and hopefully we could reach out to whoever's listening.
Absolutely.
For some more information.
Yeah, best way to find you.
Adolfo.lopez@algosec.com.
There you go, folks.
Yeah.
Hit him up if you want to get a demo of AlgoSec in more detail. Reach out to Adolfo and the team over at AlgoSec. Visit algosec.com. And thank you again for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
It was fun.
This has been another episode of Audience First. We are out.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.